So our next presenter of the session will be Luke Davies, who's the Managing Director of Data Centers at Global Connect, where he's responsible for their portfolio of 17 data centers across Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and northern Germany. So please join me in welcoming Luke to the stage.
That's an inauspicious start. Thanks.
Thanks.
I'm going to start with a confession, and I hope you guys don't run for the doors when I say this. I'm not a techie person. So, you feel sorry for me, right? So, you know, if you were to plot all of these presentations on a spectrum, then over here would be the cool security guy with all his lines of code and stuff like that. Over here is me with all of my pictures. I hope you can bear with me. I'm going to talk about immersive cooling. I'm going to start with just a very brief couple of words on what it is. I'm sure I don't need to tell you guys what immersive cooling is because you are all techie people. But basically, it is the immersing of servers in a data center environment into a liquid, in this case, a non-conductive oil-based liquid. Why would we go to the effort of doing that sort of thing, of introducing something that's so different? Well, it's simply because liquid is a more effective cooling agent than air. And as a result of that, you can fit more kilowatts into a rack, which for our customers, for us, at least in theory, is super exciting. And we've chosen one phase rather than two phase. I'm not going to go into the details of that. How different is it? Well, one measure of difference, I suppose, is the reaction that you get from people. And I have to say, I've been absolutely blown off my feet by the reaction. The people in my team have been super excited about working on it. I've actually had journalists, calling me up and interviewing and wanting to take pictures, running around the data center, looking at this stuff, giddy as schoolboys, at the chance to kind of look at this equipment. We won awards, all this sort of thing. Why is that? I think it's simply this. If I take a step back, whenever someone asks me what I do for a living, and I say I work in data centers, typically I get this kind of glazed look. They don't really know what it is. When I explain it, they're even less interested. But if I say I'm going to drop a computer in a bathtub of liquid, then they think I'm mad, or they think it's fun, or they're exciting, or whatever it is. And I think that's why people have been so interested and continue to be. Who's it for? Why are we even doing this? I'm doing it because, or my business is doing it because we want to just continually push the boundaries and just find options that are going to work for people in the future. The kind of customers we're actually having discussions with at the moment are, so I have one customer we already have in air-cooled racks who does AutoCAD renderings. So this is these kind of super realistic looking pictures you see in adverts of a car or a phone or whatever. The thing doesn't exist in reality. It's based on technical drawings, and then they use advanced rendering to make it look realistic. We're talking to a public institution that has a lot of data and wants to be predictive with that data. And increasingly, we're starting to talk to people who are kind of nibbling around the edges of artificial intelligence. And I think the jury's still out on whether this solution is actually what people need for that, but more on that later. What's in it for customers? What's in it for us? Well, very simply put, because the liquid is a more effective cooling agent than air, you consume less energy. So the estimate is as much as 90%. Now, of course, if you don't put that many kilowatts into the tub, into the rack, then you're not going to get this kind of effect. But it will still be far more energy efficient than a conventional air-cooled rack. 25% increase in performance by some estimates, and for us, not for our customers, they don't really care, but for us, 80% less floor space. So I can pack more racks into fewer square meters, and in some locations, that's really worth something. What do we have to think about? And sorry, this is literally the most techie part of this entire presentation. I had to sit with my projects guy to kind of get this right. This is what it looks like. Pretty kind of unsexy, but what you see here is, the kind of each of these bathtubs is effectively the equivalent of a rack, and there's 4 of them, 1, 2, and then 2 on the other side. There were some key things we had to think about when we put this into the data center environment. The first was redundancy. So, the standard unit that ships from the OEM comes with 1 CDU, and that doesn't work for our customers. They need redundancy. So we basically kind of aftermarket engineered it to stick a second CDU in. Secondly, security. Having to think about who's going to be opening these flaps on the top, whether we can actually sell half a rack or third of a rack or whatever it is to people, whether they'll be comfortable sharing a rack, an open rack effectively with somebody else. At the moment, the way we're doing it is we're only selling full racks. Thirdly, we built in district heating offtake because of all of the, firstly because we're actually, we've installed district heating in this particular data center, which is close to Copenhagen, but also because we can see that coming down the track, all data centers are going to come under pressure to have district heating offtake. And then small things, we had to reinforce the floor. Things are really heavy. Actually, turned out we didn't have to reinforce the floor, it was strong enough, but the guys were feeling paranoid, so they reinforced it anyway. And you need room for a small crane. Small things, right? But you need a little crane, a little gantry crane, because the servers, if you're kind of leaning over this thing and you're trying to pull this server out, super heavy, can't engage your core to that extent. So we have this little kind of gantry crane, and it kind of picks the servers out of the liquid. Now, you might well ask yourself if if what I say here is true, and these units are using far less energy, and people are worried about energy, because of the energy crisis at the end of last year, because they might have sustainability objectives. Why on earth would my door not be beaten down by people who are positively, trying to grab it out of my hands? And I've been trying to figure out this myself. I have a very small sales pipeline related to this equipment, which I find very, very strange. But a little bit of research suggests that it's basically 3 factors. One is fear of the unknown. I'll share a little anecdote with you. Had a prospective customer for this, existing customer for air-cooled racks, come to us, and he said, he had a question. He said, if I put my servers into the liquid and they short circuit, can I get my money back? Well, then we kind of misunderstood the basic physics behind this, because the liquid is non-conductive, so by definition, that's not going to happen. But I think the fact that even the question was asked suggested that people are still trying to get their heads around this. The second is basically the equipment. So you can take a normal server, and again, pardon me for being non-specific and non-techie about this. You can take a normal server, you can pull the fans out of it, and it will just show fan errors, but it will still work. So we have one stuck in the bath at the moment, which is doing exactly that. There are things you can do in order to get a work around that. And for instance, we're also working with Dell, who have servers that are specifically designed for this. So that's one way of getting around it. And then the third is just a very, very human thing. So guys, the technicians who are coming in on behalf of our customers and are putting their equipment in and configuring it and all this sort of thing, what they're really worried about is sticky fingers. This oily stuff is sticky. It stains your clothes. It's pretty nasty to deal with. It's not poisonous, I have to add. You could drink it if you wanted to, but I wouldn't recommend it. But they are worried about that. So, we provide gloves, we provide wet wipes, all that sort of thing. But it's like these little kind of human factors are the things that stand in the way. And I think, over and above that, for us, this is a part of the future. It's not going to be the dominating technology in our data centers. It's going to be a niche use for a very specific type of customer, and for them, I think it's going to be a really important part of the future as well. That's it. Any questions? Yes.
Can we have the microphone before you start?
I think I win the prize for having the shortest presentation today.
Yeah, question from my side is, you're putting a tank with a lot of oily stuff.
Yep.
How about that fire resistance, or is that you're putting oil in a fireplace?
So the oil is fire resistant, and then we have all of our normal kind of fire suppression equipment. So fire detection, we have leak detection under the floor and around it, and then we have all of the kind of Inogen, gas systems as well. It's a good question. We've looked into it. We're not worried about it.
Okay, thanks.
Two questions at the front.
So, do you pump the oil around, or is it stationary?
The oil is basically continuously pumped in and out of the bath very slowly, because it really doesn't heat up all that fast. Compared to the air. I mean, we've all been in server rooms, right? There's this huge kind of whirring and continuous circulating of air. Just imagine this is a much more sedate environment. It's so sedate, I actually wanted to put rubber ducks in it, but my project's people were not keen. Didn't think I was being serious.
We had a question at the front there.
So, are you using this for your own servers? If yes, or rather, if no, why not?
Yes, we are. In a kind of skunk works, mess around type way. The reality is most of our servers are, in a kind of IT environment. It's internal IT stuff, right? And the conversation I'm trying to have with colleagues is, how do we actually concentrate down the workloads into fewer servers? We're running them hotter, and it therefore makes sense to put it into this stuff. The conversation that I'm trying to have with customers is a similar one. If you take system integrators as an example, or kind of hosting companies, then they have an exposure in terms of their margins, because they have multi-year contracts with their end customers, which gives them a kind of stable top line, but then they have this kind of heavily fluctuating cost base in terms of the power. I mean, this in effect is a kind of hedging instrument against that fluctuation. And I see that as hugely attractive in theory. But as I said, sticky fingers, fan errors, all of these things, they get in the way.
Mohammed Mahdijan from IT. My question is, usually you do have MTBF, mean time before failure. Do you have any research on how it will affect the components in your servers? And the next question is, I guess it's going to be like your car. You change the oil. How often do you change the oil?
I'm trying to remember the answer I got to this when I asked my projects guys. It was something like the oil will last 10 or 15 years, something like that. So as long as people don't drop stuff in it. And the reality is, I mean, people will, they'll drop things and have to fish them out and whatever. As long as they don't drop gungy stuff, it's going to be okay. And it will last for quite a long time. I'm not techie enough to answer your first question, I'm afraid. We'll have to kind of leave that one. Come to me afterwards and I'll find you an answer.
Tom Strix, Cloudflare. We use integrated racks quite frequently. So we have a rack integrator that does the entire assembly for us, puts it in a wooden box, and then dumps it at some of your data centers. Is that something that you're evaluating to offer as well, where you basically, the only thing you're offering is the bathtub and we can dump our racks in there? Or are you currently only doing pure like rack solutions and you can only dump your servers in?
I have to be honest, I hadn't thought about it. The way it's working at the moment is basically, servers coming in and just being put in there. But you're absolutely right that particularly for sort of larger customers who have their own, specific cabinet designs, these things get, delivered on a pallet with everything included. And I don't see why we shouldn't have some kind of, unit that just gets slotted into the bathtub here. Should be perfectly possible.
There's a question in the middle there.
Hi, James Rice from Networks. Quick question on the 90% power reduction. Is that across the entire facility, or is that just on the cooling?
So it's just on the cooling, just for these bathtubs.
Right. Okay.
But you know, for customers, the way we bill them is they get billed for the kilowatts of allocated cooling capacity, as a bare minimum that they will always be able to get, and then they get billed for the kilowatt hours. And those kilowatt hours are often, in a normal market, they're like a third of the total cost to the customer. When things spiked last year, they became like a half or more. And so, if you can reduce it by 90% or even 50%, it makes quite a significant difference to the bill they see.
Okay. And in terms of hard drives, what do you do about the breather holes on them to stop the oil ingressing the hard drives when you thermal cycle them?
I don't know. I'm sorry. all I can tell you is when you pull the server out, the oil's inside and around it, and it just drips out. It seems to not be a problem. I'll try and get you a more convincing answer afterwards by talking to one of my guys.
So, Norrie Eriksson, Olika. 3 questions. First, how about warranty of the servers?
Sorry, say again?
Warranty.
Warranty. Yeah, interesting question. So we're still trying to clarify, if you have a normal server and you just pull the fans out and stick it in this, does it void the warranty? I haven't got a straight answer yet. I think it's going to be very dependent from customer to customer and their equipment. But if you get a server that is designed specifically for this, then it comes with a warranty that's designed for this, and it obviously doesn't get voided. So that's what we're aiming for.
Second question, I guess you won't be able to answer it, but how about fiber optics? I guess that isn't really working one.
Fiber optics?
Yeah.
In what sense? That you plug it into the server? And
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the server I saw just this week was had some fiber plugged into it, so must be fine.
Right.
Non-techie answer. Third question.
Third question, what's the worst thing that had happened to your with doing this?
What's the worst thing that happened?
Yeah. What should I think about when doing this so I don't do the same mistake again?
I think the toughest part of this has been convincing colleagues that we should do something radically different. And I don't mean in the technical fraternity. My projects and ops guys are super excited about this. I mean more on the kind of financial side, because you're basically taking a leap into the unknown and buying a hunk of junk that in the end might not be filled up with customer equipment. But it's a relatively small investment if you just do one unit. So it's almost worth doing it just for the innovation value. Next. I can't see if anyone raises their hands because I got the lights in my eyes, but raise your hand and the mic guy will see you.
I think you win the prize for the fastest presentation and the most questions. So please join me in thanking Luke for his presentation. Thank you very much, Luke.
Thank you.